Welcome to Care Less with Carly, the podcast for people who are done playing by their roles. I'm your host, Carly Lynn, and each week we'll cut through the noise with real talk, bold conversation, and expert insights to help you trade perfection for purpose and live life on your own terms. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Care Less with Carly. I'm here in the studio with Cate Luzio, founder and CEO of Luminary, an inclusive membership platform and global community that's redefining what it means to network, lead, and grow as a woman in today's world. Before building Luminary, Cate spent 2 decades climbing the ranks in corporate banking, ultimately walking away from a high-powered role to follow a deeper calling. Now she's on a mission to create space for women to rise together. Welcome, Cate. I'm so excited to have you here.
Can you just do my intro wherever I go?
That's
amazing.
that's
I
it.
love that. One small correction, because our mission is absolutely around women as a woman, but we're for women and allies.
That's
and,
right.
And so very focused on that gender inclusive component, because for me, and you talked just a little bit about the banking, I've had really some extraordinary male mentors and sponsors and managers. And so when we launched 6 years ago, it was really important. Ultimately, as a woman in the business world, we know we need access and we need opportunity and we need support. Certainly, our mission is really geared towards women, but we can't do it without allies.
Sure. And that's such an important point, and I'm glad you added
Yeah.
that in. I remember when we talked, I had asked if you had thought about some of the other membership models that had
Yep.
come before that had just been for women and your thoughts on that and how you wanted to create Luminary in a different way. And you gave a really nice answer that can't do it without allies.
Yeah. And because we have both a B2C and a B2B community, because we work with so many companies, it's also really important for us to help companies drive inclusive behavior and allyship across all types of communities, not just gender. And so I think for us, in working with so many enterprises around the world, we watch the light bulbs go off as we're leading a session or a workshop where you just see people coming together.
There's so much that I want to talk to you about, between your time in banking to building Luminary, traveling the world. I understand you've visited almost 130 countries and you wanted to be in the FBI at one point. Before we jump into all of that, I want to start off with this question. If 10-year-old Cate knew that you were at this point in your life where you've launched a global platform for women and their allies, what do you think she would say?
She would say, keep going.
Yeah.
She was a very formidable little kid. And I thank my parents for that. I thank my brothers for that. I'm in the middle of 2 boys. And, you know, I say this, I wasn't really raised as a girl or a boy. I was raised as a competitor. And a lot of that competition is with myself. So I think that 10-year-old girl would be saying, get after it. Keep going. You got nothing to lose. I mean, you got a lot to lose, but you got nothing to lose.
Who were some of those early influences?
My dad, definitely. My younger brother and I are only a year apart.
Okay.
So almost like twins. I mean, everything that we did, sports, friends, going to the pool, playing outside, whatever. It was always really, my older brother's 5 years older, so everything was done together. I really don't remember a moment in my childhood where he wasn't part of that, especially sports teams. And so my dad, I think, did that by design. One, we'd always have a buddy. And you'd always have somebody to go somewhere with, especially when things seemed daunting. I think my mom was a big supporter in that and putting her arms around us when it got a little too competitive. But I think my dad definitely, and I would credit him with a lot of my ability to be so focused and determined and relentless, because that's really something that I think he taught me. And the work ethic was really from both my parents. But I also have 2 brothers that are incredibly successful and incredibly relentless and focused and determined. So I think that was just part of our growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And even how you mentioned the buddy system, so much of what Luminary stands for and cultivates is community. And it sounds like that was such a big part of your early days and early experience, was you were always in community.
Always.
With your brothers. And I think that's a lot of what Luminary provides.
Yeah, I grew up in a cul-de-sac and in Jersey, and you just played with everybody in that cul-de-sac. So we were like little roving packs of kids. And none of the kids that actually were in my cul-de-sac, we went to school together. They all went to private schools and Catholic schools. So it was really interesting. You'd go to school, you'd have this great friend group. That's one community. You'd come home, and then the kids that were in your neighborhood and your block, that's another community. And then the people you play with sports with. So I think without knowing that's what it was. And then we went to church. There were always these mini communities that I think by design from my parents, they wanted us to be surrounded by other people that we could learn from, speak up for ourselves. I take so many lessons from that throughout my career, not just being an entrepreneur.
You said that you were raised to be a competitor, which I'm sure served you well in 2 decades in banking, holding executive leadership roles at HSBC and JP Morgan. So what ultimately woke up inside you where you said, it's time to leave this corporate rat race and do something completely different? I imagine that wasn't a light bulb moment, but probably something that was building over time.
What was a light bulb moment, because I never would have expected to be an entrepreneur. That was just not anywhere in my thinking. My younger brother is an entrepreneur. So I watched him and I was like, I don't want to do that. That looks really hard. I thought you could control your hours. All I do is seeing you on your phone all the time. But when the idea sparked for Luminary, it was after yet another unimpactful event with women. Once I started writing these ideas on paper, the idea and then ultimately the business took shape. Once I had it written, and this is why I'm such a big proponent of business plans, is once it was on paper, I couldn't look away. And
it became real.
It was there and it was something. And I said, well, I can give it a shot and try this. And what's the worst that can happen? And actually, I have an amazing mentor. He's still a mentor. And he said, what's the worst that can happen? You could try this out. Now, it's very risky. It's harder than it sounds. But I had built an incredible career. And his point was, you have a reputation to fall back on. You can always go back to banking. Anybody will hire you. Listen out there, banks, in case something doesn't work out with Luminary. No,
Yeah,
and he said,
No.
and plus, even if it doesn't, imagine the skills and all the things that you're going to be able to build for yourself that you wouldn't have if you just stayed in.
Right.
I think entrepreneurs, and I didn't know this 6.5, 7 years ago when I started, that it takes the right kind of person. I still don't know if I'm the right kind of person.
Why do you say that?
Because I thrived in a corporate environment.
Okay.
Love having a boss. It goes back to I loved having a coach in sports. I loved teachers. I like anyone that's able to provide feedback that I can learn and grow from. Also give me the pat on the back and say, great job and keep going. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't need that or don't want that sense. They don't want that control over them. I look at some entrepreneurs and say, oh my God, you've done this 4 times. That's amazing. I don't think I could ever do that.
Have you learned anything that surprised you in this entrepreneurship journey that you didn't expect? For example, I've sat in rooms before where from the outside, these people must have had these carefully baked plans before they started this company. And then you really dive in and people are flying by the seam of their pants all the time. Is there anything like that you've realized?
Yeah, I think because I did a full plan, and that's just who I am. I'm a planner.
Right.
But I teach a business plan boot camp every month, sometimes multiple times a month. And I just led one today, actually, for 600 plus people.
Wow.
95% of every time I do this say they don't have a business plan or financials. And these are not just startups. These are people with established businesses. They're doing business.
Whoa.
They've got businesses. So kudos to them if they can keep going. But for me, I need a plan. I need that North Star that I'm sort of focused on, that I have all of these goals and objectives, and then I can kind of cross those off the list. So for me, like, I don't have a boss, but I have a plan. And so that plan kind of acts as that. I have to make plan. I have to exceed plan. And if I don't, then it's on me to, what do we do to change that?
And it also sounds like you surround yourself with smart people across a variety of different industries who can give you guidance on complex problems. I also was wondering, on an identity level, going from being associated with a big bank, a corporate entity that people know and they're
Mhm.
familiar with, to starting to say, okay, I'm starting this thing. It doesn't
Yeah.
exist, but I'm going to start this thing. That's a really big shift. How did that feel for you in terms of your identity and just,
Awful.
yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
Why?
because I can still feel it. I mean, I still feel so I remember the first time I had to introduce myself as no longer a banker, that I was
Mm,
now this founder. I didn't know how to make that because I was always used to carrying my business card that had this big title and this big role, and I had this big brand behind me. Here I am now sitting around this table going, "Hi." I remember my shoulders sort of rolled in and my voice got lower because I didn't know how to embrace that new identity yet. I am not part of a lot of different rooms. And most people would say, "What do you mean? I see you everywhere. You're
sure,
doing a lot."
sure.
But the reality is there are a lot of divides in the startup ecosystem. One is, have you raised? How much have you raised? How many companies have you had? Have you sold? Are you planning to exit? Oh, you're a small business owner. You're not a startup founder. Those types of things. And that exists. And so I really embrace this idea. And this is why we don't have an application process at Luminary, is that if I really want to break down barriers for other people, including myself, then I have to do it in ways that are truly inclusive, not having an application process, keeping our membership at an economically accessible level for all, having a fellowship program and a scholarship program, but also inviting all types of voices around the table and into those rooms so that certainly the things that I'm feeling, I know others. It's like part of my personal mission. I don't want people to feel like that.
What do you think would need to change in your role to feel like there is a little more of an even playing field?
So I don't think that's my kind of cross to bear. I just choose to live my life with intention, with purpose, thinking of others. Do I did get it right every single day? No, but I try. And I then that's what I tell my team. It's like if you can wake up with the best intentions and try to do right for yourself and for others and for the business, that's all I can ask,
Right.
right? So this is why our slogan has always been come sit at our table. We've all felt that moment when you're going into middle school or high school or camp or somewhere where you don't know where to sit and nobody's offering you a seat next to them, right? I don't care what you look like. We've all had a moment like
Of
that.
course.
But what we have to realize is that's not your issue. That's their insecurity.
Right.
And so for me at Luminary is making everyone feel included, that everyone feels respected, that whatever their identity is, we recognize it.
Mm.
So if they're this amazing startup founder that has raised hundreds of millions of dollars and exited, has a whole content team behind them, to the small business owner that's just launching her own digital agency, to the financial advisor working at some big bank, having them feel like their voice matters and what they do and that identity. And I'm going to do my best to try to invite as many people to the things that I'm doing and that I'm a part of and that I think we need more voices again around that table.
Yeah, well, you're being the change that you want to see
Mhm.
more of. And what do you see now as a byproduct of creating a space where people are welcome at the table? What do you see inside Luminary?
I see it happening real time. You know, you watch. I think the first couple of years, as a founder, and I think many founders will see this, say this is you've got to be sort of everywhere. You've got to be in. If you, and we have a physical location and a digital business, but I felt like I needed to sort of be a part of everything,
Mm.
right? Practice what I'm preaching. Hopefully, people could see the top down. I don't need to do that anymore. And I love that. I love that I don't have to moderate everything. I love that I don't have to be at every event. I don't have to be on every Zoom. One, I see my team doing it, and that's an amazing
Yeah, you've
thing. Yeah.
empowered the next
And
generation of
ex-
leaders.
and they are learning in the
Of
process.
course.
And then I see the community doing it. And I see them doing it organically. And I see them showing up. Even today's session that we did for this business plan bootcamp, you can watch it in the chat. You can watch people lifting each other up and propelling them on and giving them sort of virtual pats on the back. We all need that. We've now created this movement where people, they're positive. They're also real and we're addressing tough conversations. But there's also, again, this real intentionality and purposefulness behind it where you can have your opinion, I can have my opinion. We may not agree, but I respect that.
Yes.
And that's, to me, that's also part of what it means to be part of a community.
That's beautifully said. You can't have community without respect.
No.
It doesn't build. There's no safety and trust.
Exactly.
How did you decide to incorporate the virtual component in addition to the physical membership space?
Well, we didn't really have a choice because we were about a year old when the pandemic hit.
Ooh.
And there were a lot of people sort of telling me, you know what, this is your get out of jail free card. You could just close this because it's been a year. You did your best, but a pandemic is here. And I'm like, hell no, a pandemic's not going to. I know we had a good model. We had a great first year. I remember looking at our financials at the end of the first year with my then COO, and we're like, this is amazing. We're going to have a great business. And then the pandemic hit. But we also, I remember it was March of 2020. It's Women's History Month. We had all this programming scheduled. And I said, well, we can't not have the programming. Like, this is our month, right, as women. So I will say one of our corporate members called and said, how do we help you? Which was amazing to me. And I said, could you put this online with us to open it up to your clients and your other employees? It was like, and I'll never forget it. It was, don't touch your face. Don't touch your 401k.
That's great.
Because remember,
great marketing.
Don't touch.
Right. Yeah. Right.
We didn't want it to. And we had over 400 people on that. And then even though we lost a ton of revenue in that first kind of 45 days, people were coming back to us and saying, how do I join digitally? How do I join digitally? We were like, join digitally.
Right. It was such a boom.
And that was it.
Yeah.
And then we realized for however long this lasts, we need to be there for our community. And yes, were people coming for our physical space? Absolutely. It's a beautiful space. But more importantly, they were coming for that community aspect and the programming and the content that we could do. The vehicle changed.
Right.
And then when we could reopen our space in like July of 2020, obviously we did it to crickets because no one was leaving. But we were like, we're going to be open for those few people. And I remember we had a new member that was from New York but lived in Senegal. What's up, Monitha? And she came for the summer to New York from Senegal. And she's like, I need a place to work. Like, I'm building a business in Senegal, but I have to build it and I need a place to work. We're like, great, you can work out of Luminary. And I remember she was really one of the first people that sort of came back into the space. And then slowly and surely, it was like, okay, people are coming back out. But we love this ability to talk to people around the world. And obviously the enterprise companies have distributed global workforces. It was just, this is now our part of our new model.
Right.
And the boot camp, I'll reference it again. I couldn't have done that for 600 plus people around the world or country 5 years ago when we were just in New York.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge kudos to you for being able to keep a 1-year-old company, a membership company alive during a global pandemic. And sometimes the world works in mysterious ways because COVID fundamentally changed how we view virtual community.
Yes.
The idea of going to a virtual session to build connection would have been almost laughable.
No one would do. Yes, agreed.
I mean, you would do it if you had to, right? But that wouldn't be the norm.
No.
And now it seems like it's a really core part of your business.
Yeah, and it offers flexibility for people and convenience. And you think of caregivers that can't make everything in person. This gives them that flexibility. Or if you're sick or you need to work from home,
right? There's so much
optionality. And I think that's why. And with many of the companies that we work with, they have global workforces. I remember coming from the world of finance. I never lived at head office for most of my career in the banks that I worked for. And so when you weren't at head office, you always felt left out. So this levels that playing field too, so that if I've got employees in London or Hong Kong or Dubai or New York, they're all getting access to that programming, and it's done in the same way simultaneously versus they had a different experience because they were in a location.
I want to go back because when you talked about the get out of jail free card and knowing what you've shared about how tough the entrepreneurial process can be at times, what kept you going? You could have jumped back to the safety net of corporate.
Yeah.
Seems like at any time.
Yes.
Even still now.
Still today, yes.
But you're still here. Yeah. And I know that there's a reason why you're still here. So can you talk about that?
We knew we were building something pretty unique. So why would we turn our back on that? The first couple months of the pandemic, I was sending out weekly emails to the community. And I would always get response like, thank you for being there for me or for us or for my business. This is what I'm getting out of it. And that's what really, and that's what not only kept me going then, that's what keeps me going today.
Sure.
Or you've changed my life, or you've changed my business, or I met my new business partner. I mean, even the event that I met you at, right? Two of the women were Luminary members that I introduced, and they're now building a fund together.
Wow.
And so that is why. I mean, that's really fundamentally why I started Luminary in the first place. But those connections and that feedback keep me going because any job is hard. Entrepreneur, corporate, it doesn't matter. Our lives are hard for lots of reasons. So if I'm not feeling some kind of fulfillment, I wouldn't do it.
How do you feel that your relationship to ambition or success has changed? I don't think you were receiving those types of emails from your banking clients. How has all of that shifted how you feel when you think about success and what it means to you?
So I think, my version of success pre becoming an entrepreneur was all sort of geared towards the role, that identity you talked about earlier, the
Identity.
role, the
Yeah.
title, the bank account. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. I think my version of success today actually, I've always got this ambition and drive around the company and where I want the company to go. So that doesn't go away. But I think the daily version of success changes. And what I mean by that is I could look at today and say, I had all these Zoom meetings, but then I had this incredible conversation on a podcast, this woman that I met at an event who I think is really special and unique. That's a great success
Right.
of a day. And then tomorrow it could be completely different. And I think now that I'm a little bit older, and maybe part of that is just as my mom used to say, as you get older, you get more wisdom, that it's okay to have fluctuating versions of success. And you can have that ultimate goal. And then you can also have mini goals. And I think today I kind of chunk up my day, my weeks with mini goals. And did I satisfy? Did I surpass that? Did I exceed it? And without having a boss, I'm the only person that can tell myself whether I've excelled or not, or do I need to do more work? And that's hard for me, but and I'm very hard on myself. And that's something that I have to kind of care less about. I think that's just an evolving part of my story.
I totally connect to that. And the way you explained how you look for the micro moments of success throughout your day. When you have a boss, it's very black or white.
Hmm.
Your boss will give you direct feedback. You're
Right.
doing well or you're
Or
not.
you're not.
And when your success and your feeling in relation to success is coming internally, it's almost like you have to just check in. Like, did that feel good?
Yes.
And it has to come much more from within.
I think the and I encourage people to do this is have your good list or your great list where you're getting feedback and save that. Save those emails that you got from a boss or a senior leader that says, great job. Save those. So the days that you're really on the bottom of the roller coaster, this is where you need them. So pull that out and read them. I think one of the things that keeps me really going, we use Slack as a communication tool. I like email as a Gen Xer, but my team loves Slack. So I have to balance that. But we have a couple of channels. One is a self-promotion channel. And I encourage everyone on the team to promote themselves personally, professionally, things they've done. I've got my art at some installation. Whatever it is. My daughter just celebrated her sweet 16, and I feel really proud. She feels really proud as a mom. So that self-promotion channel, I think, is so important. It also gets women, as right now I only employ women. That's not by design. That's just how it's happened, to get comfortable with advocating for themselves, their small wins, their big wins. The other channel that we have is a member testimonial. So anytime you hear a member say something, they send you an email, they DM you, cut and paste it and put that for everyone to read. Because this isn't just about Cate. This is about the team. This is about the business. This is about the community. And just reading it and having people read it and go, whoa, that person said that every single event they walk away filled with joy, or now my business is cash flow positive after all these events, or I was able to advocate for a raise or a promotion or just having a skip level with my manager. Those are the kinds of things. It doesn't have to be this grand big thing
Right.
every time. It's all those, like you said, micro moments. And so that channel in our Slack is there to remind me as well as the team the impact and the difference that we're having with
Yes.
people's lives.
Yeah. The ability to self-promote can be really strange for a lot of people. It's hard for me sometimes. I'll
Yeah.
do something professionally, personally, that feels like such a win. And my inclination is to just keep it to myself.
Yes.
Keep it small. And I don't know where that came from, but I do feel like in a lot of ways, social media has helped to course correct
Mhm.
that, where it's very easy to share milestones or celebration. But professionally, I don't know if we do that quite as often in
No,
the
especially for
workplace.
women.
Yeah.
We don't. I mean, it's a proven fact, and one of the courses that we teach is that it's probably the number one requested workshop that when
Wow.
we teach with corporate clients, because self-advocacy, we're so used to, and we should advocate for others. We're so used to
Yes.
advocating for
Yes.
everyone else. And
Right.
then when it comes down to it, you can just watch people, they get very uncomfortable, and we
Of
make
course.
people talk about themselves. And lots of people will say, well, why does this make me special? Or why should I promote this? Because we aren't mind readers. Your boss is not a mind reader. And so, as much as in a corporate world, you think they know about you, they don't know everything. So, you should be talking about yourselves. And this is it's everyone was, I don't want to brag. It's not bragging if it's based on facts. So, look at the facts and share the facts. And that is your part of your story. We've done this since we launched the business in our team meeting. Every team meeting, we start with a personal highlight, a community highlight, and then a shout out. So you have to shout out somebody else. You have to shout out yourself. And then you have to shout out something that happened in the community. And you can't not do it. No one gets a pass. And that, I think, has helped our team be more comfortable with this idea of advocacy and self promotion and want to share it. So I love that. And then we watch it happen in the community all the time.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a muscle.
Oh,
Once you become comfortable speaking about yourself in a way that, like you said, it's not bragging if it's real,
but it takes practice.
right? Then, and you also look for those moments of, oh, that person just did something really
Yes.
great. I'm going to make a mental note so I can give them recognition.
I have a lot of great friends that, different group chats. And one of them, Alice Kim, she's fabulous. She's a founder of a company called Perfected. In this group chat, she'll share and she'll say, I just got featured in Wirecutter. It's like amazing. And then everybody can chime in.
Right.
And you think about that, right? It's a multiplier effect. So if we can all do that, just a little bit.
A little bit.
It's
Yeah.
And you're always more inclined to do it if somebody does it first.
Right.
So sometimes it just takes you taking the leap and saying, by the way, that needs to be promoted. You should talk about it more.
Maybe that's an invitation for listeners to try to implement this in some ways in their world. But even a friend group chat. I mean,
Absolutely.
be the bold one to say, hey, team, this is what we're doing now.
Yes.
Everyone shout someone out. I have a couple of girlfriends where on someone's birthday, we'll go around and say the thing we love the most about the person.
I love that.
But that shouldn't be once a year.
Right. And you learn so much about people.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're in a professional environment, you learn what your colleagues are going through. You learn, I love watching it when we do it in our corporate clients. You'll see this person ran the marathon. This person climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. This person has 3 kids while also got her master's and was working full time. And as colleagues, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
These are amazing things that you
Right.
should be talking about, but we don't do that at work. And I think we have to create a culture much more, especially now, where people can feel free to share.
I wonder if you were ever to go back into the banking environment, how different you would feel reemerging with all of this experience. You'd be sending out emails to your, to the other
Yeah.
partners
And they can't use Slack and banks anyway.
saying, okay, everyone shout someone out this week.
Yeah, no, we used to. I will say, when I was in my former life, I mean, we did that a lot. I made people talk about
Okay, that's
deal
good.
wins, and then share in that win with other product people or partners. So that was always part of really what I did. So I think it was natural when I started it with our team.
Okay.
Because, recognition, it comes in many forms. Money is one of those, but
Yes.
also acknowledgement and visibility and exposure. So I think I was already doing that. My partner will say, you could never go back into corporate America after all this time as an entrepreneur of calling the shots. don't know. By the way, anyone listening that is part of Luminary, I'm not leaving anytime soon.
Right.
But I think that feeling okay, and I see this with a lot of people right now that left corporate jobs, that tried to do things entrepreneurially, and maybe it didn't work.
Mm.
It's okay.
Yeah. Of course. It's a chapter.
It's go back, go
Yeah.
do something different. And I've also really tried to get founders that I know that have built businesses and they're just done. Like, it's a different world. Companies that started 50, 100 years ago, they were meant to start, and they're legacy companies. It's a different world now. You could have a company for 5 years and then say, I don't want to do that
Of
anymore.
course. Of
And you
course.
don't have to sell it. You just might say, I'm done doing this and I'm ready for the next thing.
And it's not a step backwards, because
Exactly.
if you're re-entering, let's say you were in corporate, you left and you go back, you have this breadth of experience. That's why I was saying, like, if you went back, which she's not, but if you went back, then, or whatever your next chapter is, you're now a combination of all of the pieces that would make you even more of a superpower.
I agree.
If you were re-entering the workforce now as a post-college grad, are there any industries that really interest you?
Fashion. I always have wanted to work in fashion.
Okay, as we can see.
Yeah. I never thought I'd find myself in banking. I got recruited into that. I kind of fell into entrepreneurship and what I'm doing. So I also think we should never pigeonhole ourselves and be open to all things.
Right.
So I don't think there's any one industry, fashion, just because I love it. But I think, again, if my skills, my experience, my background can lend itself to any industry, you just have to be open to where you can fit. And I have a friend who's an incredible leader, and she worked in fashion for most of her career, like true fashion. And now she's in jewelry, which you would say is the same. It's retail, but it's a very different industry. And she's learning that. And I love watching her as a very senior executive learn a whole new industry within an industry. But then she's also challenged in learning something new.
Right.
I never want to stop learning. That's my big thing.
Yeah. We no longer live in a world where, or it's very uncommon, I would say now, to have one profession for 30 years. Maybe it exists. I don't really see it as much anymore. And I think that in some ways that's a great thing.
It's a great thing.
Because you bring so much knowledge and past experience to the new role or to a new industry, and also the power of being in spaces where you can talk to people who have all different types of life experience and work experience. I have a couple rapid fire questions I want to end with, but you've traveled to 130 countries almost.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, where do you find the time? And two, where do you think that love of travel came? What have you learned from all of these trips?
So definitely love of travel was I had the opportunity to study abroad when I went to college, when I was in college.
Where did
And
you study?
I went to Spain in Sevilla. And, I had been on a plane 2 times in my life by that point.
Wow.
So going there and just being exposed, and traveled all over Europe and got to go to Africa, it was amazing. And I remember coming home, and, they always say when you do something like that, you'll come back a different person. And I really did come back.
Yeah.
And I also wore scarves, but it opened my aperture, like, whoa, there's this huge world. And then my first job when I was working in tech, the first trip I ever went on was, they're like, hey, get your passport. You're going to China. I was like, China? It was 1998, 1999. I'm like, okay. And I think just, again, being open, once I got into banking, and then the majority of my banking career was in international banking. So always had something to do internationally. And every time I traveled, I would use it as an opportunity to learn about the culture, meet with teams, my clients. And so a lot of, when I was at JP Morgan, I ran Europe, Middle East, and Africa for the business that I was in. That took me all over the world. And then when I was at HSBC, I was in a global role. So I was in different countries all over. And I really always took the opportunity to spend more time if I could kind of pack it in. And I get so much, not just joy, just that ability to see new things, that drives me. So I've got a lot more countries on my list to see. The privilege of being able to see so many also came from my career in finance.
Yeah. I mean, it totally changes you. It opens your eyes to new cultures, new ways of living, new value systems.
Absolutely.
It's
And also the inequities of life. It's like opening your eyes to the problems of the world, but also what can the solutions be? I trekked 100 kilometers across the Gobi Desert
Wow.
for water aid. And you realize how scarce water is on this planet.
Right.
and it just opens your eyes.
Yeah. Yes. Where's your next travel destination?
So in a week and a half, I go to Greenland.
Wow. That's
Yes.
exciting.
And then at the end of this year, this will be my 20th country in Africa, but in my 130th country,
Okay.
I'll be in Rwanda.
Wow. Is that
Mhm.
gorilla?
The gorilla trekking, chimpanzees, and yeah, so it's been on my bucket list for a while, so I cannot wait.
Wow. That is such a bucket list.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I have a couple last, these are rapid fire
Okay.
questions. The best piece of advice you've ever received?
When you fall down, get back up and brush it off, walk it off. Keep moving forward.
100%. I feel like you can apply that every single
Everything.
day.
Yeah.
Who's a person that you currently admire and why?
Well, I'll say because I recently was on his inaugural podcast is Andy Dunn. He and I got connected in January of this year through someone else. We got to spend some time together at I'll call it a business retreat, but I didn't really, I mean, I knew him. I've read his book, Burn Rate, which is amazing. And I'm inspired by his ability to share his story about mental illness, how he builds his life, and his wife, Manuela, is an entrepreneur, and how they manage all that, and just how he's built Bonobos, sold it, and now is building this next startup to build really platonic friendship ways of connection. So that drives me when I can meet somebody that's just so passionate about what they're building. It's so inspirational,
Yeah.
but he's also very tactical. So he's one that right now is pretty inspiring in my world.
And lastly, what's something that you used to believe is true that you no longer do?
Oh, sure. That the only thing that I could ever do was work in a bank.
Yeah, 7 years later.
Well, 7 years has gone by since I wrote the business plan. So yeah. And I think that identity, I'll add to that work isn't your only identity.
So important.
I feel, and I think we talked about that in that roundtable that when we first met, that identity, we get so wrapped up in that identity of what we do. And that's wonderful. We're proud of the things, but it's not the only thing we do.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your story. For a later date, we'll talk about how you were almost in the FBI. Or I love that anecdote about you. I would have not had that on my bingo card.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being
Thanks
here.
for having me.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to Care Less with Carly. If this episode resonated with you or reminded you to stop living by someone else's rules, I would love to hear about it. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, leaving a quick review means the world and helps more people find the show. If there's a guest you'd love to hear from, DM me their name at Care Less with Carly on Instagram or drop me a comment. I'm always looking for powerful, honest voices to bring into this space. Until next time, you got this. Keep caring less about what others think and more about what makes you come alive.